thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure people might have seen already that this week we've just launched our Boss Your Baby Budget campaign, which is all about how it doesn't need to cost the earth to have a baby, and hopefully to reassure people that it's not going to cost a fortune, and also there are ways to save up for maternity leave and really practical tips that we can all take on board and make sure that we survive that period where we don't earn quite as much money. So that's where you ladies come in, and we're really grateful to be joined by you both. We know that you're real experts in this field, so we always like to start with a little intro to our guests. So can I please hand over to you ladies to explain who you are, how you came to set up Financielle, and what exactly that's all about?
Absolutely. So I'm Laura.
And I'm Holly.
And we're sisters actually and co-founders of Financielle. And we founded a female-focused finance app that's free in the App Store that was to kind of plug this gap of managing money as a woman and kind of highlighting some of the gaps and highlighting some of the extra things we have to think about, like finance on maternity leave. And it started off as an Instagram community like 4 or 5 years ago to now, 6,000 users on the app in the App Store.
Wow. Amazing. So it sounds like we've got a lot to learn about the app. And obviously you ladies have already got loads of tips and tricks on your Instagram, and loads of reels, really helpful tips, and you've already provided us with a few of those in a blog that's live at the minute. So this is where we want to really pick your brains and chat about how we can really pivot our budgeting and how we can really prepare for baby.
Yeah.
So when it comes to having a baby, I guess we can have we can have a budget maybe, but then I guess it goes out the window when we actually go on maternity leave and we start to maybe earn a lot less than we used to. So let's take someone who might have just found out that they're pregnant or planning to get pregnant. What would be your first bit of advice to them?
So, and having been through this recently, because I've obviously just had baby number 3, I have been there, and I've also been there for baby number 1. And let's be clear, we're not all going to have the same maternity leave as Molly May. It's a different budget, and I think that's the first kind of thing, which is there's lots of excitement sometimes, and we can kind of get a bit carried away. But taking a step back and taking the time to have a bit of a plan and start to put pen to paper on 2 big budgets, really. One of them is the baby budget. So what you think you're going to need to look after the baby, whether it's a little box that it sleeps in, which I think they do in Sweden or Scandinavia.
Yeah, got a box, don't you, of essentials in Scotland as well, I'd heard.
Yeah, they say the baby can sleep in the box maybe, but that kind of, basic what it needs versus actually what's quite aspirational. What kind of nursery would you like, and what kind of pram would you like, and write it all down, because you'll write it all down and you'll cost it up and it will feel a bit overwhelming, but you've got a starting point. Whereas if you kind of just go a bit blind and start just picking things up and buying things online, and suddenly you don't know what you've got, what you've not got, and you might have forgotten something really key that's quite important.
So that's really important, actually, and I know we've just recently spoken to the Savvy Spender official, and she gives a blog about wants versus needs, because she said, like you, congratulations, by the way, on baby number 3, and working, yay. She's got an 18-month-old now, and she said if she'd have thought about things in a different way the first time round, she'd have saved herself so much money. So I'm glad you've touched on that, and we'll go into that in a little more detail. But in terms of somebody that's maybe found out they're pregnant a little bit further along, and they maybe don't have as much time to plan and save for their maternity leave, would you have any top tips for them?
I think it's all about, we call it financial modelling, but I don't want anyone to sit and go, numbers, I'm not, that's not me. And a financial modelling sounds like you need a financial advisor to do that. This could literally be done on a piece of pen and paper. So say if you find out that you're 5 months into your pregnancy, you've got around 4 months left. Fingers crossed, you can literally start to just write down exactly what you've got coming into the household, what's going out, can you squeeze what's going out? So can you flex down on your shopping budget? For example, you might shop at M&S for your food shopping. Can you go to Aldi? That's a cheaper supermarket. Can you meal plan? Can you use your slow cooker? All those lovely things that can just help you squeeze your budget a little bit more. You want to create something called an excess. So it's a bit like a really simple profit and loss account. You can run your household budget like you would do a business. So what you've got coming in, that's you and your partner if you've got one, what's going out, and then anything that's left can be put towards a savings goal. So for example, if you're not fortunate enough to have a really good maternity package at work, of which I think the majority of the UK aren't, you're going to be getting statutory maternity pay. Model what that looks like. So what's your income when you've got your full pay, full salary before you go on maternity leave? And what will it look like when you get the statutory maternity pay? I think it's after 6 weeks you go into SMP. So what does that look like, and what do you need to save to, because there's going to be a gap. You're getting paid 75% less. You still got your outgoings, you still got to pay your mortgage, council tax, possibly a car. And then you do have extra things like formula, nappies, wipes, things that you didn't have to pay for. So arguably we spend more, but we're getting less into the household. So it's about financial modelling, but I don't want that to scare anybody. It's so simple. You could do it on a piece of paper and do it together as well. Don't ever think that if you are fortunate to have a partner in this journey, really sit down. We call it a money date night. We've got a lot of people in our community that really look forward to having a money date night because they can kind of table some of the things that they're arguably a little bit worried about.
And on that, and I think this is a really important point, you know, where you're not in a relationship, and I've been in that position whilst pregnant, it is a bit more traumatic and stressful, and you've got a different money conversation to have. However, there are still two people having a baby. But when you're in a relationship, it's kind of like sometimes the mother's mindset switches to kind of preparing, and we have to go on that journey with our partner. And there's two sides to this. There's one, you know, I'm not going to man bash and say, or the person that's not having the baby is going to be a bit careless, but they're not going to be as focused, and they're not going to be as mindful of even some maternity things like clothes that don't fit, and you know,
maternity pads. You go through like 12, as we all know, you go through like 12,000, and that's a cost like every single time. Or nipple cream or nipple. Yeah,
that's a cost that's not thought of. But the other side is, you know, sometimes the person that's pregnant can get carried away and, you know, want to buy everything and kind of do Zara hauls and H&M hauls. By the way, everyone buys far too much for the newborn stage, as we're all aware, and they get grow out of them. So just having that mindful partnership conversation about it together, which is we're in it together, how much money do we need? And also that what's a want and what's a need is really helpful. What I found good in a situation like that is if you do your list of things that you need for baby, try and prioritize them, one in terms of importance and two in terms of timing, because for someone that's found out they're pregnant a bit later in the journey and they feel they've got less time, that, you know, a nursery, for example, it's the last thing you need. Like, we all like having the nursery done, but genuinely, if you are up against it and you're feeling pressured, it's up to you to fix, like, you know, car seat's going to be up there to get the baby home from hospital. Those immediate newborn basics that you kind of, you know, you might want to do, not want to do secondhand for the brand new stuff. And then as you get further along the journey, the kind of nice to have that, the nice sleigh cot that they're not going to go in until they're 6 months old. That's a good tip for wants versus needs.
I totally agree. And you know how you mentioned how you can really do it simply on pen and paper? In your app, do you have like tools to help with that as well?
Yeah, if you want to, like I said, model a budget, our functionality allows you to do it on the current date, but then you can also model like, what does 6 months look like? So in 6 months' time, we're going to get this amount into the household. These are usual outgoings, and you can just flex and change all those monies coming in and out. And it's all about planning ahead. So a lot of budgeting apps out there will tell you after the fact how you spent your money, and they call it a budgeting app. I'm like, no, that's not budgeting. That's reporting on, I spent too much in Costa, Zara, guilty, whatever. I don't need you to tell me after the fact. Like, this is all about planning and kind of controlling the things that you can control, and you can a lot of the time. We just don't realize it because pregnancy is just quite a messy time.
There's a really good actually free, it's called a money MOT, and it kind of removes the overwhelm, because sorting out your finances can be a bit overwhelming. It gives you one step at a time. There's 30 steps. I think we originally ran it as a challenge one November, and there was 30 days and we just ended up with 30. But now people go to the app and kind of work through their budget line by line. So if you do want to cut back, or if you want to optimize your expenses so that you've got more money to save for baby, that's a really good place to start actually.
Brilliant. I think that sounds way more, it sounds more familiar than having to open a spreadsheet and start from scratch and sit down. It's all a bit scary if you're not really very financially inclined. So that's really helpful. Obviously, you've already mentioned that people are entitled to different kinds of maternity pay, but once they're on maternity leave, like I know you've alluded to benefits and things that you can look into on the blog that's live now, but have you got any top tips on how you can enhance that maternity pay and what you could potentially claim?
So I think that the first thing to start off with is actually that partnership point about where if you are in a relationship and really think about how finances are combined. You don't need to combine bank accounts, but it's very easy for the person not on maternity leave to not really consider the costs associated with having a baby and with being on maternity leave. So, this idea that you might have put 50% of your wages into a house account and then suddenly you're off for a period of time. Don't stay silent on that. Do the maths and do it early and be collaborative, because this is a kind of it's a business. Treat it like a business decision. Why should one partner have to kind of go without? The other thing to bear in mind, and like we're quite passionate about this, is why should a woman not get pension contributions for the year that she's on maternity leave? So that what happens is, because the person not having the baby that stays at work, they will continue to get contributions from the government, from the employer, and from the salary. Whereas the person on maternity leave will either get tiny ones because they're on statutory, or they'll get zero at different points. So really have a sit and a conversation about that, because we've been able to establish before, actually creating the females, the person having the babies anyway, pension as a bill and putting that in the budget means that a woman doesn't lose out for that full year. So, and that's where we've actually had different experiences. When I was on maternity, and this is before I started the business, the Instagram page first years ago, my husband and I sat down for our baby number 2, and we agreed an amount that we were going to put into my pension. And I was the breadwinner, so it wasn't like I've always been used to having like less income. I had a higher income and I was taking a big drop. So we decided, and we were fortunate that there was enough room in the budget at that time to do that. Whereas you didn't, did you?
Yeah, no, only because I wasn't aware that you could do this, and I didn't realise that I wouldn't be getting paid pension contributions when I was on maternity leave. It's not something that's really discussed, even though we had a very good HR team. No one ever sits down as soon as you tell work that you're pregnant. It's like, okay, so what we're going to do about this gap that you're inevitably going to face when you go on maternity leave. So my husband had a really good paternity leave deal where he got paid more in his 6 weeks off paternity leave than I did in 2 years of maternity leave. And in that time, he still got paid pension contributions. So I'm 2 children down and then 2 years out of my pension as well. And it's just really unfortunate that this isn't something that we're taught either in school. It's not something that we're taught in the workplace. So if anyone's sat at home feeling like, oh my God, like I've had 3 children and I didn't even think about this, it is completely normal. This is a very strange conversation for us to be having. It's just not really had.
So having that chat with your partner or your family, if they're around, is really important, because that's the stuff you can control. There's a lot when you're on maternity that you can't control, but that's something you can. So have these open conversations about, what should bill contributions change during that time, and also a genuine look at what maternity leave does cost. So people might roll their eyes at like mum's going for a coffee, or a mum feeling guilty going for a coffee, or not having enough money to do that. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're at home for 12 hours on your own with a baby, actually for your own mental health, a walk and a coffee, it could make or break you personally. There's also little bits of baby classes or baby swim, and often we speak to the person on maternity leave and they're paying for it in isolation of the person off. So again, I'm labouring the point, but it's really important that stuff you can control. The other stuff is making sure you head into government websites and looking at what you are entitled to, because your obviously wage comes down massively because you're usually on maternity leave that's not supplemented. There's lots of different bits of used to be child tax credits, but now comes through in universal credit. Child benefit is something that you can claim and you can go back, I think, 3 months. So even if you don't get your act together straight away when baby's born, the minute you've got, I think, a birth certificate, you can apply and you can go retrospective 3 months. So don't lose out on that either. And then the other wider maternity benefits are things like making sure you get your dentist checkups. I know it's hard work getting an appointment at the moment, but that is all free. And I had a really good dentist last week that was like, right, what can we get you, because you're off and this is all free. So I was like, well, do you do Invisalign? They were like, no, I'm sorry, that's too far. But
bit too far.
but like even things like, I think during pregnancy I was grinding my teeth, and I don't think I am anymore, but they were like, we'll get you a gum shield done. They will help you out, because it is obviously complimentary while you've got maternity care. So like I said, our article should help. There's some other really good ones on the government website that helps you with what you're entitled to. Find that out early, because as Holly says, if you do it on a piece of paper, you go to our app, you plan out your prospective budget, you'll be able to build out what income looks like when you're on maternity and what costs look like.
Oh, that's all great advice. And I think, like you say, it doesn't come to you, does it? You've got to go out there digging because, the government don't want to hand out all this money and they want you to find it. So, yeah, I will definitely put the link to the Gov website on after this as well so people can find that easily. So, Laura, you mentioned you are actually off at the minute, although you're doing a bit of you're working today, which is great. Thank you. But I guess third time around, it's a bit different having a baby. You probably had most things, but you have had 3 babies now. So what have you learned in terms of budgeting for a baby, like from having 3?
So, and on that, I am working today because my partner is on shared parental leave today. So again, it's something that is having a great time. It's watched I'm a Celebrity reruns because we're too old to watch it live. It's gone to the hairdressers and taken the baby. Honestly, it was made for maternity leave, but I had a conversation with him early on that we've started a business, and whilst I'd like time with the baby, I also don't want to kind of take too much time away. And he's had conversations with his employer, and we're sharing it. Although I've worked out that he's off full time over the World Cup, so I kind of feel like I've been fed there that he's kind of coordinated November and December off, which is a comedian. But exactly, and the sun's good. But financially, it's such a tough time. And do you know what? It's really easy for someone who's had maybe baby number 2 and baby number 3 to say, "Oh, you don't need anything new, and you don't need this, and you don't need that," because when you're in that position, when it's your first baby, or it's a first boy or girl, if you've kind of had a different sex, that you kind of want to go all in. What we kind of say is you have to give yourself permission to spend. But when I talked earlier about doing that like priority list, think about the things that are really important to you. So, baby's first outfit is always a really big deal, isn't it? And pram was a really big deal for me. Pram, you can get carried away. You can go to baby shows and you can try them all out and you can kind of get oversold. The pram that I use, we bought 11 years ago for baby number 1. It's a Bugaboo Chameleon. And every pregnancy since, we've just got it reconditioned and cleaned for about £150. And I've still got it. I mean, it's squeaking a bit. It could really do with some WD-40. But everyone thinks it's a brand new pram. And I'm like, this is 12 years old. And it's just taking a view on these things where just because it was pre-loved, it doesn't mean you're giving your baby any less. And, luckily there's boys in the family. Holly's got 2 boys. So my little boy, because I've had 2 girls, is in the most amazing clothes, is in a 0 to 3 coat this morning. I'm not sure who gave it to us, honestly. It looks brand new. He's probably going to grow out of it like next week. So you kind of can go all in for these impressive products that they've grown out of, and you can kind of grieve for because you're going, they didn't even get to wear it. So having the confidence to embrace Facebook Marketplace and Vinted and family, and accept that actually it's really good for the environment, really good for our bank balance, and kind of it's after I can't describe it. It's after that wave of excitement, you suddenly realise, actually, let's be sensible about this and not get carried away. So definitely,
I love a shared spreadsheet. I remember you doing a shared spreadsheet with Aldi, your second daughter, and there'd be a family WhatsApp, and it'd be like, does anybody know where the crib is? Because we just share it between friends. Like, does anybody know where the Bugaboo is?
Papoose is.
Yeah. Whereas, as well, if you just want to give your children the world, and I get it. Like you said, especially first baby, you have to buy, arguably sometimes new. Sometimes family members want to buy things as well. I remember our mum being really passionate about I want to buy you a pram. So you can save those nice to buy things. Family members might want to do that and gift it, and sisters and brothers, and there's already someone that wants to kind of buy you your first.
And on that, because no one. It's like when people buy you stuff that's just not for you. There's 2 things there. One, if you push out a list early, which is, look, we're struggling with money, but times are tough and we want to be sensible. We're going to buy these things. If you're going to look to buy baby something, or if you want to chuck in together, do that. That's one thing. It's like a baby gift list, and it's not pushy to do, or it's helpful to people. The other thing is, if you get gifts from people that you don't like, swap them immediately. Do not feel guilty. They'll never see the baby in it. Just say that they grew out of it, because you'll get duplicates and you just get things that it's a waste. It's going to go into a landfill anyway. Why not? Holly's all the time, she's like, take it back, straight back to next. Go get something you like.
I think that's a really good point, and I think the fact that just mixing and recycling stuff. I know I've got friends who've swapped everything around, and we've got similar WhatsApp chats going on with where's this, where's that. But then I think as well, you made a good point that if you buy well, when you do buy something new, you can make that last for 11 years, like you have, which is amazing.
Definitely.
I don't know how you've done that. It definitely did not happen with my 2 boys.
So once the baby essentials list is nailed, then what would your advice be when you go out to shop for these items that you definitely want to buy?
Well, a little bit like we talked earlier, finances is a bit like running a business, and I feel like if we were paid to look after our finances, we'd probably do it a little bit better. And it's the same with the budget. So make your list, and this is exactly what I did. I created a Google sheet, created a list of these baby essentials, and in fact we could probably pull one together and share it and collect that from our community, because I bet people have got really good ones. You then start to look at what you already have, what someone else in your friends and family circle has, and again, I think if you're really good at using it for the time you need it and then offering it back out, one, you don't get a load of clutter, and secondly, you're kind of putting it back out there so people are happy to lend because they think you'll give it straight back. There'll then be a gap of things you need to buy, and every single, especially on the more expensive items, every single penny counts, because if you save money on one thing, you can put it into another. So it's about going down line by line. So if pram is going to be purchased, you have to act like you're paid to find the best deal for that pram. There's always discount codes. There's always Facebook Marketplace. You can go for something as big as a pram, you may go say, can I come look at it? I'm not ready to buy yet, but I just want to have a look, because you could find, £1,000, £2,000 pram for half the price, and you've just been able to re-put that into your budget. So I think that's what we believe, like tackle something one at a time. Do it early enough, because you don't want to be sat doing this, very pregnant or with a newborn. Like, try and do it ahead of time and tackle one thing at a time, and even researching one thing at a time. So come on Instagram and say, what formula did you guys use for your baby? And you can kind of gather intel so that you're not panic buying, the most expensive on the first day the baby's born, because you've kind of not made that decision. The more decisions you can make, you remove the overwhelm. And
share the list as well. Don't let that be a burden on just a pregnant person.
Oh yeah.
I think you did really well at that, delegating and sharing. So if someone wants to really geek out on the economics of a pram, which my husband loved, the wheels, does it go up and down curves, all the things I arguably probably should have thought about more because I would be using it in maternity leave. He went and geeked out on the pram. That's fine, that's delegated, off you go. Whereas my thing might have been, I want to find the best bottles because the last child really suffered with colic. I don't want to go through that again, where you're in the middle of the night, YouTubing and Googling and all that kind of stuff. So a list that can be delegated and shared. And then, like you say, sign up to loyalty programs. It's always, if you sign up to someone's newsletter, you can get 10% discount, whatever it might be. Always search out those things.
Black Friday is coming up. Watch your list for Black Friday. Check the prices now. Check what they're going to be and take advantage.
Definitely. I know we've got some great Black Friday offers at the minute. So just keep the eyes peeled, everybody, for what you might want from our range. Yeah. So once baby's here, then how would you go about breaking down your weekly and monthly budget?
So there's a couple of things here that hopefully will really help people. And I said in the app, this is how you do it, but you can do it on a piece of paper. Firstly, do that work to nail what the income's going to be for when baby's here. So there's also changing income. So I think sometimes people can get, is it 6 weeks at 95%, and then it can drop. Some people may have enhanced maternity pay. Sometimes work give extra benefits and gift vouchers and stuff. So nail down as much income as possible as can come in, benefits, entitlements, everything. Even for those people who will be getting child maintenance as part of this pregnancy, put it at the top of your budget and have this really fat figure that you can kind of use for maternity. And then you go through your expenses in kind of 3 categories. One is fixed expenses, so what all the direct debits are, whether it be your rent or mortgage, council tax, Spotify, Netflix, anything that's a consistent figure, put that in. Your flexible expenses are things like your groceries, your eating out. Some people might want a baby fund, which is a fund per month, that like an amount that you will spend on baby, whether it's for an activity or whether it's for an outfit or a swim class, whatever it is. And then the other category, which is a bit tougher on maternity leave, but it's called sinking funds. So we teach people to save up for these big expenses that come up every year. And so instead of putting it on a credit card or getting stressed and using savings. You know, even for something like your council, your MOT, if you can put £10 to £20 a month aside for your MOT, when it's due, you don't get angry and annoyed that you're having to dip into, you know, your savings for an MOT. But it's the same for Christmas. You know, Christmas on maternity leave is actually quite stressful because you're on less income, you've got a child in the family, you might be entertaining more. If you can try and plan ahead for this Christmas and next Christmas, which might be baby's first proper one that we kind of can shove them in an elf outfit and really enjoy the pictures, plan for it, because you get this guilt-free time when the money's there, and that goes in your budget as a monthly amount. So say, for example, you're 12 months out from Christmas and you want £1,200, it's £100 a month that goes in the budget, and again in the whole budget, not just in the person on maternity leave. And by doing that, the next hack that we want to share with you is, when you've decided these little amounts like groceries, eating out, coffee, beauty, whatever it is, if you use a bank like Monzo, Starling, Revolut, any of these banks that have the pot functionality, the best thing to do is to divide it up into the pots that you've decided. An example of that is, say if you do want to have a coffee budget and it's £50 a month, that's 10 coffees, you know, that's not a huge amount. But if you put it in, you've already decided and given yourself permission to have that coffee. So when you're coming up to Costa and you fancy a coffee, you don't feel the guilt of, can I afford it? Should I? You know, you say, actually, no, I'm going to, and you move it from the pot. It's the same with eating out. So say if you want to go really strict on maternity leave and you're staying home and you're trying to be tight with money, and one of your friends says, do you want to come for like a burger or a lunch, or we'll go get some Sunday roast as a family? If it's already in that pot and it was already in the budget, it's kind of been decided for you, so you can dip into it without feeling like you're overspending. And I think it's really helpful for when you're on maternity, because everything seems to be tighter. We in our community help people pay down debt. So it's a big thing. We want people to ditch debt so they can kind of save, buy houses, invest. The biggest thing for maternity is it's not adding more, because we can't, you know, we're not going to hit our financial goals probably on maternity leave. It's probably going to be an overwhelming time, and it's time to be patient. But that doesn't mean to say that we don't want to go backwards. So some of these hints and tips can kind of make us have a really fulfilling maternity leave. But we don't want to look back on our time on maternity leave and feel like we went backwards financially. The system's set up for us to go backwards, so we're kind of here to help people at least maintain where they were.
I think that's great advice. I actually go on maternity leave in 3 weeks, and yeah, I guess the first time I was on maternity leave was in lockdown, so I couldn't go anywhere. So now I'm like, I really need to get out. I want to enjoy this maternity leave. So I feel like quite proud that I've done a few of the things you've mentioned, but there's things that you've said there, like pension fund, things like that I've not even thought about. So that's amazing advice. And it's really good to know that you help people regardless of being on maternity leave. Like, there might be working mums that are paying for childcare. So all of your advice goes way broader than what we've been speaking about today. And I think it's just really important to recognise that obviously times are tougher than normal at the minute, and there's probably people watching that are just a bit worried about money in general. So what would your top advice be to those people that are feeling quite anxious about it at the minute?
I think there's a lot going on in the world that we're not in control of. So our biggest thing at the moment, and our biggest important bit of messaging, is control what you can control. And that is doing things like creating a budget. A lot of people avoid the numbers because they don't like them. I'm not a numbers person generally, and you'll be like, why are you in this business then? But I suppose that's why, because I'm not very good at the numbers. I'm like, okay, well, what other things can I control? And it's knowing the numbers. It's not necessarily playing around with them. A lot of people bury their heads in the sand, basically, especially when you're hearing negative things on the news, the newspapers, radios. The politics is crazy. We can't control any of that. You know, tax rates, we can't control those things, but we can control what comes into our household and what goes out, and how we can plan ahead, and how we can discuss with our partner how we're feeling about money. Like, these things are all very much in our control. So that is, for me, the most bit of important messaging around this cost of living crisis that we're going through.
Fab. Well, I think you've given us some amazing advice. Well, so thank you very much.
Fab. If anyone's got any questions, like I said, just head over and DM. We're always on the DMs answering questions. So if you do want to ask something on the live, you can just come to us whenever.
Perfect.